Hello everybody, welcome back to Léon Denis Online and to our study of the book After Death by Léon Denis. As you can see in this study, we'll focus on the second chapter, of the book that is about India and about the Indian religions, Hinduism and Buddhism. So let's start by taking a look at what Denis says in the very beginning. He says here in this chapter, as we have asserted previously, the secret doctrine can be found at the basis of all the great religions and in the sacred books of all people. As we said before in the beginning, where did it come from? What is its origin? Who were the first to conceive it and then transcribe it? So here what happens, as this very first part over here, he's saying exactly what he said before. In the other chapter, we took a look at the other time we were here. But then, and as we have the answers for all this, you see, where did it come from? From the spirit world. What is its origin? The spirit world. And who were the first to conceive it and then transcribe it? Well, the people who were the initiated, who were over here on earth, ready to get all this information. Then he says here, the first books that featured the great doctrine were the Vedas. The Vedas, whose age could not be established, formed the primitive religion of India. So here what he says, the first books. Why the first books? Because these, the Vedas in fact, they are the very first, let's say, written document we have about religion really. We have some other things, but something deeper, with more information, that's really what we have. And what are these Vedas in fact? So the Vedas are a large body of religious texts from ancient India. They were composed in Vedic Sanskrit, and they constitute the oldest books in Sanskrit literature and the oldest scripture of Hinduism. So you see, these books over here, these Vedas, there are four of them. You have the Rig Veda, the Yajur Veda, the Sama Veda, and the Atharva Veda. And in all these books, we have a lot of, let's say, information and a lot of religious, they are really religious texts, and they are really very interesting and very nice. So, and then Denis, well, we are just going to show you one of the things, one of the excerpts that Denis uses here in this chapter. He says this, there is an immortal parting man, which is, O Agni, the one to be heated by your rays, kindled by your fires. So, as you can see here, it is really interesting because in the Vedas you have this, there is an immortal parting man. And then he says, which is, O Agni. Agni, by the way, is the fire god in Hinduism. He is, let's say, Indra's twin brother, And he says this, the one to be heated by your rays, kindled by your fires. And why? Because normally in the temples in the past, there was a fire that never, let's say, died out. And the same fire, it's interesting because in Rome, you had the Vestals, the god Vesta. And there was also fire that could never be out, let's say. So then, what happens over here? He says these things, and then let's go to Krishna, that he also speaks about Krishna. And who is Krishna, by the way? So Krishna is the 8th avatar of the god Vishnu. It's interesting because the Buddha is also an avatar of Krishna, and the Kalki is also one of them. There are many, as you can see here, there are some of them. And what is an avatar, by the way? It is the incarnation of the God here on earth. If you think about it, it's interesting to think that for many Christians, Jesus is the incarnation of God here on earth. So as you can see, these avatars, they are what? They are, let's say, they are deities that come here in order to teach people, teach humanity, to let them go the right way, let's say. In fact, to see about Kalki, it's very interesting. There is a book written by, it's a novel in fact, okay, written by Gore Vidal, that is Kalki. It's really interesting. If you have the time to read it, have the chance to read it, it's interesting because it is like this. Kalki, he's going to Earth and he's a destroyer. He's going to destroy the status quo in order to form a new earth, let's say. And there is a guy in the book, Kalki by Gore Vidal, there is a man who thinks he is the avatar. He is Kalki. And it's interesting because the whole book deals a lot with religion. And there are a lot of philosophical discussions in the book. It's a pretty interesting book if you can read it anyway. But anyway, here you have Krishna. By the way, who is Krishna? As we said, he's the 8th avatar of Vishnu. But also Krishna, he is a very important deity. Why? Because he appears a lot in the Bhagavad-Gita. And what is the Bhagavad-Gita? The Bhagavad-Gita is the 6th book in the epic Mahabharata. And what happens in this Bhagavad-Gita, in fact, but by the way, Bhagavad-Gita, the meaning in Sanskrit is the song of God. Gita is song, by the way. And what happens? Krishna is the charioteer of Arjuna, who is a warrior. And what happens? There is going to be a war. And the two armies are just one in front of the other. And they are ready to fight. And then Arjuna, he asks Krishna, who is his charioteer, in fact, to take him to the battle. Not to fight over there. He's going to be there because he wants to take a look at the two armies that are right in front of each other. And he wants to understand what is going to happen. He's full of doubts about, does this war really have to happen? What is going to happen in this battle? Why do we have to do all that? And in fact, what happens, Krishna is there to teach him lots and lots of things about spirituality and about life. Of course, naturally, this war, this battle that is about to happen is all an allegory, because of course it will never be true. So what is this allegory in fact? You see, you have the two armies. In fact, what these two armies represent, they represent the good things and the bad things that live inside each person. And this battle that is about to happen is what? Are the good ones, the good feelings and the bad feelings, fighting inside each one of us. And then, and that's why Arjuna, he was so, let's say, he was kind of, do I really have to fight? Because the fight is going to happen inside him, inside each one of us, inside each person in the universe, let's say, here on earth. And that's interesting because, and then Krishna, he starts teaching Arjuna, telling him lots of very interesting things. So the Bhagavad-Gita is a very beautiful book, in fact. You see, it's really interesting. It's worth reading. Really, really true. But anyway, as we're speaking about that, then Denis, he shows us here something also. There is something else. It's an excerpt from the chapter 2. He says, Krishna renewed the Vedic doctrines, basing them on the ideas of Trinity. Again, you see, here we have the Trinity. The Trinity in Hinduism, it is Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. The Trinity in Hinduism. If you think about it, it's really interesting because you have this Trinity in many religions. In Christianity, you have the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. In Egypt, you had Isis, Osiris, and Horus, for example. So it's really interesting. Anyway, you have here basing them on the ideas of Trinity, of the soul's immortality, and on successive rebirths. Surrounded by a group of disciples, Krishna moved from town to town in order to spread his teachings. And then, what were his teachings? Well, here you have some of them. The body is a finite thing, but the soul that inhabits it is invisible, imponderable, and eternal. So, here we have a truth, let's say, okay? The body is a finite thing, but the soul that inhabits it is invisible, imponderable, and eternal. Then we have another one. All rebirths, either happy or unhappy, are the consequence of deeds done in previous lives. What do we have here? Just the cause and effect. If you do something, well, whatever you do, you'll have an effect. If you cause something, no matter how long it takes, you will get the effect anyway. Then you have the other one. You carry in yourself a sublime friend whom you don't know, because God resides inside each man, although few know how to find him. Again, you have here, that's exactly what Jesus said in the Gospels, if you think about it. God resides inside each man, each one of us. And it is up to us, you see, to recognize it, and so on. Then you have the other one. Only infinite and space can understand the infinite. Only God can understand God. And that's really true, because sometimes, well, sometimes, no, most of the time, I really think that I do not understand God. It is really hard to understand God, especially when, let's say, when things you do not understand happen, especially when the things you think are the right thing do not happen. And you keep on wondering, but why? Why doesn't God do something about it? So it is really hard to understand him. So as you can see here, Krishna said, well, universal truths, that even nowadays we have all this with us here. So it's really hard to think that, oh no, oh come on, you see, that was nothing. We have the right religion and so on. That's really something that Denis keeps on telling us here, that we can't think something like that. Then he speaks about the Buddha too. Something else, the Buddha, in fact, although many people, especially people who don't know Buddhism, think, is what? They think something like, oh, the Buddha is like a god. But in fact, the Buddha, each one of us can be a Buddha, because the Buddha is just an epithet, and it means something like the enlightened one, the one who got enlightenment. And everybody, if we follow Buddha's steps, for example, Buddha's way of life, we can become a Buddha ourselves anyway. So, but who is the Buddha, in fact? And then let's see here. So the Buddha, the fully enlightened one, that is the meaning of Buddha, was born about 2,500 years ago at the Himalayan foothills as the son of the Sakyan king. That's why in many Hindu texts, in many Buddhist texts, he is called Buddha Sakyamuni, especially because of that, because it is from the clan of the Sakya, that is, was the king. Then you have, his surname was Gautama in Sanskrit, and the name given to him was Siddhartha. So he was Siddhartha Gautama, in fact, from the Sakyan people, anyway. Then we have, at the age of 16, he was married to a princess named Yashodhara. And he was married to this princess, and he had a son. And everything was fine. He was leading a very happy life over there in the castle, just enjoying himself, and etc. Everything was fine until he started pondering about aspects of life on earth, such as sickness, old age, death, and asceticism. And what happens over here, as soon as he starts thinking about all that, about sickness and old age and death and asceticism, he decided that, well, life was not exactly what he thought, that life had much, much more than that he could not think that life was just enjoying everything, enjoying, let's say, the palace, enjoying the happy life he had over there. And what happened then? And then, at the age of 29, he renounced the world. He left the castle, he left his wife, he left his son, and he decided to find a way to enlighten himself. And as he tried to do that, he looked for some ascetic teachers, for example. And what happened? As he found them, he really followed their teachings. And some of their teachings were quite radical. Very, very radical. And what happened? After a while, he decided, no, that's not the right way. And he decided to look for his own way to get enlightened. And when he got it under the Bodhi tree, as it is like that, he really discovered that all those things he had learned before, all those radical ideas, most of them, they were useless because they did not lead him to this enlightenment that he was so fond of, that he really wanted to find. And he died when he was 80, around 80, that's exactly what we have. So what happens? So what was all this enlightenment? What was the discoveries Buddha made? Then we have this, the Four Noble Truths. You have these Four Noble Truths. The first truth is what? The truth of suffering. And what is that? According to the Buddha, life is suffering. So what happens? You see, it doesn't matter how happy sometimes you are. Life is suffering. Why? Because you're happy now, but you can be very unhappy. Just 1 hour, in 1 hour you can become very unhappy. If you don't have what you want, let's say, I'm so happy because I got a new job, and then you lose your job, so you suffer. So let's say you had a reason to be very happy, but the reason for you to be very happy can be also the reason for you to suffer. That's a very interesting thing about this noble truth. Why? It reminds me of a book I read a very long time ago. The name of the book, if I'm not mistaken, is The Great Religions by Which Men Live. I think that's the name of the book. It was a very long time ago and I don't have the book anymore. Anyway, and in this book, the author, let's say, there was one chapter for each religion, all of them, okay? And it's interesting because I remember, I was a teenager, in fact, when I read this book. I think I was about 19, I think, 18, 19. And what happens? And in this book, I remember that when I read it about Buddhism, I thought, gee, but Buddhism is a terrible religion because everything is suffering. That's everything they say, that it's suffering. And that's exactly what the author said, what the guy who wrote the book said. He said over there, well, Buddhism is a very pessimistic religion because for Buddhists, everything is suffering. There is no happiness in life. And that's not true. It doesn't mean we don't have happiness in life. What the Buddha said was, there is happiness in life. Of course, life is happy. But the thing is, we have to find real happiness. Why? Because if you go and you put your happiness, let's say, in the wrong things, these things that make you happy now will lead you to unhappiness. Basically, that's what the Buddha said. He did not say, for example, that life is suffering, that we are all unhappy here, everything is terrible on this planet. No, he didn't say that, by the way. And that's something terrible what the guy in this book said, because something else he also said was the following, that life was suffering, and as life was suffering, the Nirvana was what everybody longed for, was the Nirvana. And the Nirvana was just nothing, was being nothing, was destroying yourself. Destroying yourself. That's what he said. Okay, that's true. You destroy yourself and then you reach the Nirvana. But what happens when you reach the Nirvana? What he said over there was, so the Nirvana is what? Is when you do not exist anymore. So basically what he said over there in the book was, and what many people think is the following. So in Buddhism, life is suffering. You want to stop suffering. So as you want to stop suffering, you want to stop existing. You want to stop being. And that's not the case. When you reach the Nirvana, what happens? You get rid of the samsara. And what is the samsara? The samsara is this chain of birth and rebirth, birth and rebirth. And why is it so? Because you see, that's the suffering. Because you see, the thing is, you get so stuck to the things you have here on earth that when you die, you want to come back. So basically, okay, many times what happens, maybe you are obliged to come back because you have to do things here on earth. But what the Buddha said was the following, that many times, you see, you are so stuck, you love so much what you have here, you are so, let's say, stuck to this suffering, you are so connected to this suffering that you want to come back, you yourself. And what does God do? He just say, okay, as you want to go back, well, I'm not going to say don't go back. I can't oblige you not to go back. I can hold you here, so go back. That's what you want. You want to be there. You want to be, you long for the food on earth. You long for sex. You long for working. You long for whatever, for parties. So that's what you want to do. And that's what the Buddha said. That the truth of suffering. life is suffering. But not because it is a pessimistic thing, not because you have to commit suicide and leave Earth because it is suffering. No, it is just that, because even the things that make you happy, if you are so stuck, if you really love them so much, they will cause you suffering. And that's the second noble truth, the truth of the origin of suffering. And what is the origin of suffering? Craving. Because the more you crave, the unhappier you are. And why? Because you see, if you crave a job, a position, you'll get the position. But then, you see, most of the time, you can fear losing that position, and that's suffering. Or maybe what happens when you get that position, after a while just say, oh, you see, I don't want to be here anymore. I want another position. I want more than this thing over here. So you long for something else. You crave a new job, a new position. And basically what happens when you do that? You suffer, let's say. You suffer why? Because you are unhappy. You say, I don't want to be here anymore. I want to fight because that's what I want. Or many other things. So basically what the Buddha said is this. The second noble truth is what? The origin of suffering. That it is craving. So you have to stop craving. Because if you stop craving, what happens? You stop suffering. Basically, that's what he said. Then the third noble truth, it is what? The truth of the end of suffering. And what is the end of suffering? The end of craving. You have to stop craving. Then maybe some people, well, that's what the guy over there in the book said. I remember that so well, because I remember that I didn't know Buddhism at all. And when I read that book, that was the first contact I had with it. And as soon as I read it, I remember that I said, my, what a terrible religion. How can people follow such a thing? And that's crazy. Come on. Life is all suffering. The origin of suffering is because you can't long for anything. You can't love anybody, you can't try and have something, and so on. And at the end, you must look for the Nirvana. And the Nirvana is what? Is when you die completely. You do not exist anymore. And that's silly, completely. Also why? Because when the Buddha says, for example, that love is also suffering, it is why? Because you see, if you get attached to a person, what happens? Many people, what happens, for example, when they are really attached to somebody, a lover, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a wife, a husband, they fear, they suffer. Why? Because many times you have jealousy, you are jealous, you fear losing that person. And if you lose that, and lose is a very bad word, let's say, because you don't have the person does not belong to you. So you don't lose anybody. You can't say that you lose. I lost my girlfriend, I lost my boyfriend, I lost my lover. You don't lose anybody. And why not? Because you don't have anybody. They are not part of you. So you don't lose them at all. So that's something the Buddha says. So when it is written over there, for example, that love is also suffering, it is this kind of love. Because this kind of love, it is selfish love. So whenever you have selfish love, of course you will suffer. And that's not the kind of love you must have. And it is very hard for us humans. Of course it is very hard. It is extremely hard for us not to be selfish about love. Because you see, oh, I love that person. If you love that person, of course you want that person to be with you all the time. Of course you want that person's attention. And most of the time, many times, what happens? We suffer when we don't have the attention we want, when we don't have that person we want, and so on. And then we have the fourth noble truth. It is the truth of the path to the end of suffering. And what is this path? This path is the middle path. And why is it called the middle path? Because it is in the middle. You cannot go to the right, you cannot go to the left. Why not? Because it is to be radical. You cannot be radical. Well, nowadays, basically that's what happens all the time, all over the world, you see. People are completely on the right or on the left, or, I know, this is the truth for me, that's a lie, and come on, that's silly anyway. And so that's what the Buddha said. And why does he say that? Because remember what I told you in the beginning over there. that when he left, when he decided to leave the castle to follow enlightenment, to try and find enlightenment, what happened? He followed the teachings of some ascetics. And what happened with that? He just discovered that what they were saying, those ideas were very radical. And he decided what? No, I'm not going to follow that. I'm not going to be, no, that's completely like this or that's completely like that. No, there is a middle path. If you follow the middle path, if you are in the middle, that's the best thing. You can't just say, oh no, that's the complete truth and that's what I'm going to do. Whatever people say that is not this is going to be a lie. And that's something interesting that the Buddha said also about his teachings. He said, well, you can try them. And if you try them and you think they do not work for you, just leave them. Just say, no, that's not for me. He lied, and so on. He also said that, see, always doubt. Do not think, for example, oh no, okay, he said so, so okay, that's the truth. I will not doubt. No, doubt it. Ask yourself things. Do not follow my teachings just because you say, oh, he's the enlightened one. Whatever he says is right. No, he said so. And that's interesting what he said, like this. You see, like, okay, so you see, do you want to try it out? Test it. Live that way. Follow my teachings. If you think they are okay, if you think that's fine, it's good for you, wonderful. If you think it is not, just leave. Go away. That's the thing. And it's interesting what, okay, so like this fourth noble truth, that is the truth of the path of the end of the end of suffering, that is the middle path. The middle path is divided into 8 parts, okay? So it is the noble eightfold path. And you have what? Then you have here the right view. You have to know the truth. So that's the right view. What is the right view? It is not your view. It is the truth. And you cannot think that you know the truth. You cannot be so proud and say, well, I know the truth, and whatever people say, I'm not going to hear, because I know the truth. I know everything. So that's the right view. You have the right intention. And what is the right intention? Is free your mind of evil. Because if you free your mind of evil, you won't, let's say, you won't intend to do bad things. You won't intend to do any harm, basically. Then you have the right speech. What is the right speech? Say nothing that hurts others. And why is it so? Because if you hurt others, they will suffer. If they suffer, and they, well, because you said something like that, they will, let's say, I will get even. If they want to get even, they will hurt you. And then it will be like that. And also when they speak about right speech, it is also not only to say nothing that hurt others, nothing that hurts others. It is also something like about gossip, about, well, idle talk, basically. That's what he said. Then you also have right action. That is what? Work for the good of others. So there is nothing to say here, okay? The right action. So if you work for the good of others, what is going to happen? The other people are going to be happy. And, well, you'll be happy too. Then you have right livelihood. And what is that? Respect life. And what is to respect life? You see, respect life as a whole. Respect all kinds of life. It's interesting because in the 10 Commandments that Moses brought to people, what happened over there? You have one of the commandments is, thou shalt not kill. And as we, human beings, we are really wonderful, marvelous, great, and fantastic. What happens? We think, okay, do not kill other people. Of course, God told us not to kill other people. We cannot murder, we cannot kill, of course not, because we have a soul, because we are wonderful, because, come on, we are special in the universe. Basically, that's it. But you can kill anything else. Why not? God didn't tell us, do not kill anything. He said, do not kill yourselves. Well, I don't think so. I think what the Buddha says here is much better. You see, not much better, let's say, but it is respect life. And he doesn't say here, respect human life, but respect life. And that's basically what I think the commandment is. Do not kill. It doesn't say there, do not kill human beings. No, he said there, do not kill. So respect life. That's another thing. In all ways, you see, it's not about killing. Respecting life what? By the way, you have the other one over there, right speech. Say nothing that hurts others. When you respect life, you also respect what people are. You also respect the way people are. You also respect their feelings. So by respecting life, by not killing them, what happens? Because many times you can kill a person with your words. So many people, let's say there are people who think, oh, you see, that's the worst thing. Killing a person is horrible. That's something I would never do. But at the same time they say so, they go to social media, for example, and they write horrible things about a person. People who do not deserve sometimes. They tell horrible things to their neighbor. They tell horrible things to their brother, to their sister, to their son, to their daughter, to their mother, wife, husband, whatever. And they hurt these people. And psychologically, they can kill this person. Bullying is exactly that. If you do that, what happens? If you bully a person, what happens? Many, many times, you see, you can kill that person psychologically. So, you are not respecting life. You are not following the commandment that says, do not kill. Why not? Because you are killing that person. Psychologically, you are killing that person. You can make that person suffer, his or her whole life. Anyway. So then you have right effort. Resist evil. Of course, you have to do that. Why? Because by doing that, you won't do any of the other bad things over there. Right concentration. Practice meditation. And why practice meditation? Because the more you meditate, the more you get in touch with yourself, with your inner self, the more you understand enlightenment, the more you understand God, the more you understand the universe. You need silence. I mean, silence with yourself. It is not only to be over there reading a book. No, of course you can do that, but I mean, meditation is really important. And why so? Because by going deep inside yourself, you can discover lots of things. You can get lots of answers. And that's why it is important to practice meditation. Then you have the other one, right mindfulness. Control your thoughts. And why does he say that, to control your thoughts? Because your thoughts lead you to action. And also why? Because you see, it's very interesting, because in the Dharmapada, that is, it's another Buddhist book where you have a lot of sayings by the Buddha. The first verse you have there is that, you see, I do not remember exactly, and I forgot to pick up the book anyway. But the very first thing they say there is the following, that it is something like that our thoughts are like, let's say, like a bull that is, you see, plowing the land. So what happens, you see, what you think is what you are. So basically what he says is, be careful about what you think. Because many times when you think, you can become what you think. Many times you think something, you say, oh, that's just a thought. But that thought can lead you to something else, can lead you to suffering. And also because by thinking, you can become what you think most of the time. And also you have cause and effect. So sometimes what you think, it is exactly what you want to do. Maybe you don't do it. Maybe you don't do that. something bad you thought, and then you said, oh, thank God, I didn't do it, so that's okay. Well, is that really okay? Maybe if you meditate, if you get in touch with your inner self many times, what happens? You'll be able to control your thoughts, these bad, let's say bad thoughts, before they come, before they, let's say, they come to your conscious mind, let's say. So basically that's what the Buddha says here. And as you can see, it is really interesting, because if you follow this eightfold path, you can really get a very good life, let's say, and you can really avoid suffering, that kind of suffering, he says. And if you think about all these things here, well, about Jesus, Jesus said exactly that, if you think about it, most of the time. If you think about what Jesus said, that's what is over here. By practice meditation, if you remember what Jesus said, if you want to talk to God, go to your room over there, close your door, and stay there. Basically what he said was practice meditation, and so on. And now, let's take a look at the Spirit's book, question number 895, just to think, have a connection. You see it over there. Then you have, besides, the question is that, besides the obvious faults and vices, what is the most characteristic sign of imperfection? And the Spirit's answer, self-interest. Moral qualities are too often like gilding on copper that cannot withstand the acid test. Some individuals may possess good qualities that help them to appear to be virtuous, but those qualities, despite proving that they have made a certain amount of progress, may not be capable of standing trial. So what do the spirits say here? Basically, that's what the Buddha said over there. You see, imperfection, self-interest. That's exactly the thing. And what they say here also, that, sometimes you see, oh no, okay, oh, they look so nice, they look so well. But in fact, deep inside, they are not like that. And why not? Because of self-interest. And they go on. The slightest disturbance of their narcissism is enough to reveal their true nature. Exactly that. And why you have this, and what you see, and what does this disturbance in narcissism cause? Suffering. And why suffering? Because of course, if you want something very much and you don't get it, what happens? You suffer. And when you suffer, what do? You start just complaining. You get angry. You start saying lots of things. You start just thinking about horrible things all the time. Oh, see, life is terrible. Oh, life is so bad. Oh, God does not love me. You see, why does that person have it and I don't have it? Oh, why that whatever. Okay, and then go on. Attachment to material things is a sign of inferiority, because the more you care for the things of this world, the less you understand your destiny. Your disinterestedness, on the contrary, proves that you have a more elevated view of the future. So again, attachment to material things. And why is it a sign of inferiority? Because you see, by being attached to material things, you suffer. And by suffering, you do all the other things. By suffering, you just start wanting and craving more and more and more and more. That's why. So as you can see here, basically what the spirits are saying here as the answer for this question is exactly what the Buddha said, exactly what Jesus said, exactly what many other, let's say, philosophers have said throughout history anyway. And then let's come here to this one over here, to the Nirvana. As I said before, when I told you about the book that I read when I was a teenager, and the guy there in the book just said that the Nirvana was reaching nothing, reaching the destruction of yourself. And it's interesting because when the Buddha said reaching the destruction of self, it is not the destruction of yourself, of self, not of you as a person, as a being. Why? Because by reaching the Nirvana, you get to be really happy. And why really happy? Because you don't crave those things anymore. Basically, that's the Nirvana. It is, you stop craving. What? Craving all those things that make you suffer, even though you do not know they make you suffer. Most of the time, we think they make us happy, but in fact, they make us suffer. It is just to think about it. And again, you see, let's think about what Jesus said here in Matthew. He said, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God." Basically, that's Nirvana. And who are these people, the pure in heart? The people who do not crave, people who do not suffer for things they don't get. Because if you think about it, you don't need to suffer for things you don't get, for things you don't acquire. And why not? Because they won't be yours forever. They are yours now, for a very brief period of time. Let's say, okay, even if I live to be 65, to be 80, to be 50, I don't know, whatever, what happens? It is nothing. It is a second, or even I don't know, part of a second, not even a second in eternity. So what happens? And you are going to suffer, you are going to be suffering because of that. You are going to be attached to something that is nothing for you. That's crazy. And why is that crazy? Because if you start thinking about it, if you start thinking about eternity, if you start thinking about being happy and not being happy, about attachment, about suffering for something that you want that you don't have, or about you're suffering for something that you want but you lost some time ago, what happens? It is stupid. Why is it so stupid? Why is it so silly? Because it is nothing. Absolutely nothing. That's why. So being pure in heart, it is what? Not to be attached to anything. Therefore, not to suffer. And what will happen? If you are pure in heart, you will see God. And what is to see God in Christianity, in fact? It is the Nirvana. You reach that, let's say, that stage in your existence in which you don't need to be stuck in the samsara anymore, in this, let's say, in this chain of birth and rebirth all the time. Basically, that's it. So here, as you can see, as Denis proved to us here in this first part about India, exactly that, as you can see, everything, so everything was there too. So that's why he says all the time in this book, in this part over here, look, you can never just say, oh, we are so happy now, we are really lucky because we have the truth and those people over there do not have the truth. That's not the case, because truth has always been part of our lives here on earth. It doesn't matter how far away in the past it was. It doesn't matter when it was. It was there every and every time. And why so? Because it came from the spirit world. So basically, that's what I have to say here to you for now. And I hope to have you back here, next time for our next study. So that's really what I have to say to you now, and I hope to see you again here soon. So goodbye, friends, and see you next time.